986. Bjarni was not looking for a new land. He was looking for his family. He'd left them in Iceland, but when he returned, he found they'd gone with Eric to Greenland. But the Icelanders hadn't been able to tell him where Greenland was exactly. They just said it was an inhospitable, rocky land to the west. So, he sailed west. And missed. Blown off course. This was the wrong place. There were too many trees. It was too full of resources to be the hardscrabble Greenland. His family was not here. So Bjarni, the first European to sight the New World, turned back east without landing. $9.99. Leif Erikson was nothing like his father Eric the Red. He was temperate and thoughtful, a polite boy. But that was only part of the reason the two were at each other's throats. The colonists of Greenland, at least those that survived the crossing, had found this new land wasn't exactly the paradise Eric had promised. But they could hunt and fish for a living, trading seal skins and walrus ivory, and under Eric's leadership, they developed a stable, though not comfortable, society. Then Eric's son Leif came and messed it up. See, Leif had gone to Norway to seek service with the king. Upon arriving, the monarch had immediately converted him to Christianity and turned him back to Greenland with a mission to evangelize. And he'd been successful. That was the problem. See, Eric was an avowed pagan, and this son of his had even managed to convert his mother, cooling their marriage. So, like his father before him, Leif thought that maybe he'd do a little exploring while things calmed down. After all, he'd heard Bjarni's stories about a forested land to the west and thought it was worth checking out, because Greenland practically had no timber. So, Leif bought Bjarni's ship, recruited some of his remaining crewmen, and struck out to find this land of trees. The first island he found was instead full of large flat stones. He called it Flatstone Land. From there, he traveled south to an area of dense forest, which he named Forestland. Shakespeare, Leif was not. He eventually reached a more temperate area with good salmon runs and meadowlands, where he decided to build a settlement for the winter while half the crew explored. And they hit the jackpot. They'd seen plentiful game and timber, but more importantly, they came back with baskets of wine grapes, which Leif and his crew, of course, turned into alcohol. And finally, Leif had a brainstorm to match his father's brilliant christening of Greenland. He called the new land, drumroll please, Vineland. Huh? Though a quick aside, they may not have actually been grapes. Scandinavians tend to call any berry a wine grape, so it's possible these were actually currants, blackberries, or gooseberries. But hey, they could be fermented, so score. Come summer, Leif loaded his ship with timber and wine berries, flush with success. By all accounts, the expedition was a triumph. And on his way back, he even rescued some shipwrecked men stranded on a rock, a deed that earned him the nickname Leif the Lucky. But when they hit Greenland, his luck ended. The same year they'd arrived in Vineland, plague arrived in Greenland. Leif's father Eric was one of the victims. The settlement turned to Leif for leadership. This meant no more voyages. Leif had to settle down. But he still believed in Vineland as a settlement. It had the timber Greenland so sorely needed. So he passed the mantle of explorer to his brother Thorvald. Thorvald's journey seemed charmed at first. His crew easily found Leif's settlement and survived off the sea their first winter. But as they explored further along the coast, they discovered something ominous. A shed. There were others here. But they also found the perfect settlement site, a place Thorvald said to make his home. Then they sighted long shapes up on the beach, 3 skin canoes. When they flipped them, they found 9 men underneath. Communication was impossible. The two groups didn't even share a root language. Violence followed. Thorvald and his men killed 8 of the strangers. 1 escaped. The Norsemen named these new people Skraelings. It may have meant screamers for their unfamiliar language, or dried skin, referring to their clothes. We're still unsure what they called themselves. But his first meeting of Europe and the First Nations, steeped with misunderstanding and violence, would prove prophetic. The man who escaped roused his village, and shortly, the village descended on the Norsemen. They sheltered in their ships, arrows bouncing off helmets, shields, and hard armor. except one. A single shaft, carefully aimed, entered under Thorvald's arm. The beach where he'd planned to build his hall would instead be his grave. The death broke the men's resolve, and they returned to Greenland. Vineland was clearly dangerous. Leif's second brother launched his own expedition, but he never made it, getting blown back to Greenland and dying of an illness. But one person in Leif's family was still willing to try. His illegitimate half-sister, Freydis, a woman who inherited all of Erik's qualities that Leif had somehow missed. Well, that's one theory. Others think that later Christian propagandists used the raging pagans Erik and Freydis as contrast to the wise Christian Leif. But still, Freydis was a force. So when a rich Norwegian decided to launch a new expedition, Freydis pushed her husband to join up. They made Leif's encampment without issue, and as summer came, met with the First Nations in a peaceful trade. At first, the native people wanted iron weapons, but the expedition leader forbid the trade, offering instead dairy products for skins. The trade complete, the sides withdrew in good spirits. And what happened next is still debated. Perhaps the lactose-intolerant native people thought they'd been poisoned by the milk and cheese. Perhaps they decided to attack the settlement and take their weapons. Or maybe a rival tribe noticed the trade and wanted to eliminate this new, powerful ally. In some versions, the Norsemen kill a man who tries to reach for an axe. Whatever the reason, someone attacked the settlement in force. The Norsemen had superior weapons and armor. The attackers had numbers. Soon the settlers broke, rushing for the ships. Native warriors entered the compound and saw a pair of horrors. The first was a bellowing, charging bull, an animal completely alien to the attackers. In the panic, it had broken its fence and gone on a rampage. The second was Freydis. Infuriated by the retreat, she emerged from a house and, heavily pregnant, snatched up a fallen man's sword. She flew at the attackers, striking in every direction and howling that the Norsemen were cowards for running, that she could fight better than any of them. She tore open her dress and beat her chest with the blade. Seeing this, the attackers decided that, yeah, they weren't going to mess with this mad woman and her horned monster. They made a quick retreat. Freydis had saved them. And for her trouble, she got, scolded for being unwomanly. How? Way to go, history. Sorry. Despite surviving, this expedition was done. They couldn't hold out against determined assaults like that. No way. After another winter, they headed back to Greenland. But you know who wasn't done? Freydis. Heck no. There was still money to be made over there. She convinced her husband to set up a new expedition, but Freydis was really the one in charge. She convinced two brothers, recent arrivals from Norway, to join them and split the profits 50-50. They laid down ground rules as far as manpower, just so no one crew would have an advantage. And thus, you guessed it, the cheating began. When the expedition arrived, the brothers found Freydis had snuck 5 extra men aboard her ship, and she found out that they moved into Leif's hall, which was supposed to be hers. As you'd expect, things deteriorated through the winter, as the rival settlements aggravated each other in 100 small ways. Finally, Freydis had enough. She manufactured a crisis, telling her husband that one of the brothers struck her and badgered him into taking revenge. They came upon the rival settlement at night, binding the sleeping men before killing them. Freydis's revenge was almost complete, except her men refused to kill the settlement's 5 women. "Hand me an axe," she said. They bribed everyone to secrecy and returned to Greenland. But the story leaked, as stories always do. Freydis went unpunished, but her reputation never recovered. And with that last burst of darkness, the Norse settlement on North America died. Greenland crews returned to harvest timber from time to time, but they didn't stay. Greenland itself, after all, was dying. The Rus trade networks moved business east, and the Scandinavian homelands lost interest in Greenland's seals and walrus ivory. By 1400, a change in climate known as the Little Ice Age made Scandinavian habitation increasingly difficult, and they were gradually supplanted by Proto-Inuits, perhaps the same people the settlers fought in Vineland, who moved east from North America. The Vineland colony, considered a mere curiosity, passed into myth and was largely forgotten. Which is interesting, because today, the Norse settlements in North America are by far the most famous products of the Viking expansion, yet they had the least impact of all their endeavors. As we've seen, the Vikings reshaped modern Europe. From Norway to Iceland, Ireland to Russia. Heck, we didn't even get to the impact on England. I'm figuring we'll leave that to our Danelaw episodes and a future series on 1066. Sure, the Vikings bounced off more organized states like the Byzantine Empire and Islamic kingdoms, but in areas of political chaos, they often proved the special ingredient to help create the countries we know today. So raise a drinking horn, friends! It's been our pleasure sailing with you.